Terrible news for Honda owners. With as many as 1.7 million units recently recalled for a whole plethora of bad steering issues, we're also talking about Consumers Reports dropping the rankings of reliability from Honda in the last several years and losing out to brands like BMW. And we're also talking about the J35 V6 engines. One of their staples has had some major recalls for catastrophic failures. Increased reliability challenges as soon as they adopted the continuously variable transmission. And we can't forget about talking about that new 1.5 liter Turbo 4 that it has a whole pile of oil and fuel dilution issues. It begs a question. Where is Honda's reliability and how is that going to impact the brand as a whole? When customers are looking for a reliable new mode of transportation with the sheer cost of buying a new vehicle, everybody wants to make sure they get the bang for the buck. They get their best value and they want a reliable mode of transportation. Honda used to be that brand, and it's so good in fact that we also bought an older used Honda Civic because we knew the brand was trustworthy. But that was before a lot of these changes, and sadly there's been a whole lot of change within the organization. Have you heard recently 1.7 million units in the United States, about 240,000 units in Canada, and about 58,000 units in Mexico, brings the grand total up to just shy of 2 million units in total, where they've had this recent NHTSA National Highway Transportation Safety Administration has reported a steering linkage issue. Yes, sadly, it's impacted many owners of very late model Hondas and Acura products from 2022 to 2025 with models, for example, like the Civic, the CR-V, the HR-V, and the Acura Integra. Allegedly, NHTSA opened this case in March of 2023 with a deeper investigation in November because of reporting of 11 drivers lost control due to a steering issue and 13 drivers resulted in an actual collision. NHTSA alleges that a worn gear spring would start to develop heat after a long drive due to high tension and a strong possibility of a very sticky steering, which prevents drivers to actually activate the steering. You lose steering, you lose brakes. Those are two of the most important parts of controlling a vehicle. It's one thing if a vehicle doesn't run or doesn't drive or accelerate. It's an entirely different thing if you can't steer out of harm's way or you can't stop a vehicle. In this case, steering is the problem. Honda mentions that there's been about 10,328 claims since 2021 impacted by this exact steering related issue. Now, on top of it, it starts to beg the question, where are consumers landing on this? I mean, consumers are going out there and expecting Honda to be the epitome, the ultimate showcase in reliability. But we've seen problems with Toyota as well, with their new 8-speed automatic transmission in the Tacoma, their rod bearing or main shaft bearing issues in some of the new 3.4s. We're seeing a whole plethora of issues with Denso fuel pump issues in Toyota, and even Toyota's had some struggles. But in this case, Honda's not alone with just a steering related issue. I mean, we look back even a few short years ago with the Honda Odyssey, they had a pile of issues with the sliding door challenges, bad transmissions, starting and stopping issues, and as well stalling. But then things started to change as well. Honda has always enjoyed a reputation of reliability, some innovative drivetrains. But then somewhere in the mid 2012, 2014, they introduced the continuously variable transmission, and then they saw some serious struggles with a lot of failures in those transmissions. It begged the question, what is this new innovative product and why is Honda electing to use that when clearly that has challenged their reliability reputation? Then also within that time frame, Honda also introduced the new up-and-coming 1.5 liter turbo 4-cylinder engine, which had too much direct injected fuel pressure, which pushed fuel past the piston rings into the oil below, mixed the oil and fuel, and then became an oil fuel dilution issue, and of course challenged the very reliability of Honda there, because that now introduces a solvent into the oil, which challenges the longevity of these engines, and that made front page news for many years. Now, while Honda's fixed a lot of those problems, they've changed some of the administrative controls. They've made some changes as well. The way you manage the ownership of your vehicle, more frequent fuel changes, as well as some tuning. Honda has in fact seen some major issues with both engine as well as transmission issues with a lot of their different types of models. When customers are looking for a reliable brand, Honda used to be on the top of the list, but it has been in fact sadly sliding down. Consumers Reports puts them down further down the ranking list. As well, Toyota also been slightly sliding, with Lexus taking a top level tier. Even though Lexus is more or less a Toyota product, there clearly has been more issues, probably predominantly because Toyota has all the Tundras, which made a higher list of failures, and sadly, just more reported claims. Now, sneaking up the back door in terms of reliability, you're hearing more from BMW with their B48s and their B58 engines. As well, Mazda is that quiet and silent manufacturer, was sliding up the back door and is showing to be much more reliable and more predictable, with standard naturally aspirated engines available, as well as torque converter automatic transmissions. They've elected to keep things a little more simple for the sake of reliability, whereas Honda has become more innovative with continuously variable transmissions, direct injection, turbocharging, and that has seemed to compromise some of Honda's reliability. And sadly, a lot of owners are now looking for other alternatives, where once they decided, you know what, I'm going to go for a Honda, now they've got to think twice. Do I buy a Honda? Do I buy a Toyota? They're both going through some major problems. So now customers are looking for other alternatives. Mazda seems to be up in sales. Mitsubishi seems to be up in sales. And now people are even looking to some of the other brands that they wouldn't conventionally do. Honda's having to come up the rear and fix a lot of these problems. Did you hear about that J35 engine, that V6? Remember the 3.5 liter V6? Sure, it had a timing belt. Outside of the maintenance on the timing belt, it was known to be one of the most reliable engines, and traditionally still sort of is, with some major caveats. There's been some real big recalls on that one. About 248,000 units are impacted by a heavy recall on that 3.5. 2016 to 2022 Acura MDX vehicles, 2015 to 2020 Acura TLX, 18 to 19 Honda Odysseys, 18 to 19 Honda Pilots, as well as 2016 model years, as well as 2017 to 2019 Honda Ridgelines, their mini pickup trucks, which have garnered a reputation for overall reliability, also is included in a selection of 248,000 and some recalls, where there was a bottom end and machining issue. Allegedly, that 3.5 liter V6 saw some improperly machined crankshaft rod bearing journals on the crank and contributed to some premature rod bearing failures. And so, unfortunately, customers of Hondas, or potential would-be purchasing customers of the brand new Hondas, are now second guessing and thinking twice about whether they want to buy a Honda product. Now, they have been traditionally very reliable, but if it's not the Takata airbags, it's bad CVT transmissions. If it's not the transmissions, it's the oil and fuel dilution issues, or the 3.5 liter V6 problems, or premature corrosion around the fuel tanks on some of their models. Honda has been not short of their own list of challenges, and while no brand is perfect, and Toyota is a classic example of that, and in my opinion, Honda is still more reliable than going with a product like GM or Ford's, the fact remains is with more and more problems that we're seeing with Honda and some of the manufacturing and some of the severity of the recalls, leaves a lot of customers to be seriously concerned. I've had people reach out to me, should I buy a Honda, Toyota, Mazda, or whatever else? And all I can do is tell them what I know, and what I know is there's been a significant amount of recalls and sort of spotty. So you almost have to talk about each model, but they all have their own caveats, sadly enough, and Honda is starting to feel the burn. And surprisingly, even with some of these failures, Honda sales are still surprisingly strong, and they're doing very well financially. So currently right now, it doesn't look to be having a major impact on the overall outcome of the organization, but it does beg the question, how much can this go on before customers start taking another decision, going somewhere else? Because this is time out of your schedule, even with Honda having to schedule you in for repair or recall. That takes time out of your time. Of course, that's a lot of money and loss for the organization. And then with all of those losses, it begs the question, if they're trying to recuperate some of that money, where did that money come from? Do they start cutting corners? Allegedly, we don't know that. We're not implying that. But all these organizations, when there's a loss somewhere, they have to make it up somewhere else. With all of that said, check out that video. What's going on with the market? It is seriously in trouble. Hope to see each and every one in the next one. We'll see you real soon. Bye-bye.